we need to talk about this project, because this one really has to come from deep within me. It feels like I have to reinvent every single step of the process. I've honestly already tried every trick I know to get out of art block and into flow. And to be fair, that did work at some points. But now I'm stuck. Again. So in this video I'm taking you along in my making process, what can cause art block and which tricks you can use to get out of it. So that by the end of this video you know how to get into flow more easily yourself. And me too, because I will be trying some tricks along the way. Okay, so I want to get into flow, but what is that really? I think we all know the feeling, an effort without the feeling of effort. As if while you're creating, everything just happens by itself. There's no distraction, no awareness of time, sound, hunger, of thirst. You are motivated to do what you are doing and experience little to none self-criticism. That sounds amazing. And of course, I have been in flow many times before. But what I want to know is, can I force this state of being? Is there something I can do in times of art block that helps me get into flow? According to psychologist Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi, the answer is yes. According to him, you enter a state of flow when you're challenged enough, but not too much. It shouldn't scare you off. The task should feel natural, but not so easy that you get bored. So it's a specific tension between feeling too difficult and too easy. With that knowledge, I can tweak my project in a way that actually helps me enter a state of flow. So let's take a look at the moments where I kept getting stuck and the solutions I found. Ever since I moved here, I've known that I wanted to do something on these cabinet doors. That was 2.5 years ago, which doesn't mean I postponed it for 2.5 years straight. I've actually thought about it a lot. I've spent so much time thinking about what I might want on the cabinet, but I came up with nothing. And not in a whoa, I have too many ideas and I cannot choose kind of way. More like I have no ideas and everything feels ugly and stupid. In my case, that's often a sign that I'm scared. The indecision is mainly a sign that I don't want to commit to a choice that feels permanent. That I will paint something on the cabinet that I might already hate next week. And then I have to look at it for the rest of the time I live here. In short, the challenge was too big, which gave me anxiety and that kept me from getting into the flow. To adjust that and to even be able to start this project at all, I had to shift my mindset. Instead of thinking this has to be a masterpiece that I would love forever, I needed to take the pressure off. I did that by reassuring myself. I told myself, yes, I want to make something beautiful on the cabinet, but if it doesn't work out, I can just remove it, paint over it, throw it off the balcony, set it on fire, whatever, just to release some of this pressure. Then, instead of thinking about all the options in life, I limited my options. I chose a color so it could give direction to what kind of image I was going to make, and on top of that I wanted to stay within a theme that I was already familiar with, especially because everything already felt like reinventing the wheel. So I decided on a water theme with a lot of green tones. What helped? I finally made the decision and knew what I wanted to make. But still, it's a really large surface, and it's intimidating. The task feels enormous and flow feels very far away. To solve that, I decided to first work everything out on a small scale. A small sketch, a sample, as if I only had to make a postage stamp. I'm used to working on smaller formats, A5 to A3, so before starting on the cabinet doors, I decided to stay within that size. Familiar territory. I even decided to first make an Artprint fully worked out in a format that I've used many times before. That way I would eventually only have to scale it up and recreate it. With completely different materials, sure, but that's a problem for later. First I needed to get over this hurdle. Which doesn't mean that I only use the fully developed Artprint as an example. No, I'm actually really happy with this print and it's hanging in a beautiful spot in my home where I can look at it often. Would you like to look at this print more often too? You can, it's available, it's a limited edition, which means I had 50 large prints and 50 small prints made, and once they are gone, they are gone. So there's 50 A3 size and 50 A4 size. It's printed on nice thick paper, high quality, and I have numbered and signed them on the back. There's the link to my website in the description of this video, but before you go there, finish watching this video first. Okay, so at this point I had already come up with many solutions and kept shifting between too difficult and too easy. I now had an art print that I only needed to scale up and paint onto the cabinet. And still, those white cabinet doors filled me with anxiety. To break through that fear and doubt, I decided I needed to work faster. My actions needed to be faster than my doubtful thoughts. So I decided to paint as large an area as possible, as quickly as possible. I dragged the doors outside and used spray paint to put down the big lines. This worked perfectly, because with spray paint I cannot work very precisely. I can let go much more easily of whether something looks perfect, simply because the material doesn't allow for that level of control. Not only because of the skill, but also because I don't know much about graffiti as a medium. That makes me much more forgiving. I also see it as an underdrawing of what's going to happen next, which gives me a lot of freedom. You know what they say, make it exist first, then make it better. And that's exactly what I'm doing here. That gave me a new insight. Because if I need to act faster than my brain can stop doubting, then it makes perfect sense to paint at a moment when my brain isn't fully switched on yet. So I decided to paint in the morning. Because in the morning your prefrontal cortex isn't very active yet. And that's where the doubt lives. So by painting at a time when that part of the brain isn't fully active, I judge my own actions less quickly and I can paint much more intuitively. And still I got stuck again at this point. I've been in a lot of pain these past days and it was also the holiday season, so I put this project aside for a while. But I really want to finish it simply because I want to move on with my life and create space in my studio for new projects. So I've done a lot of research into new ways of getting into flow and I'm testing them out for you now. Flow is all about the right mindset, and to get into that right mindset, it's recommended to create a small ritual before you begin. That way you prepare yourself to paint, and if you repeat that ritual often enough, your body will start to recognize it too. And eventually, almost like a Pavlovian effect, you will naturally slip into a state of flow. A ritual can be something simple. Changing clothes, turning off your phone, putting on specific music, making a cup of tea, setting up your materials. It's the things I would normally do anyway before painting. The difference is that I used to see these things as separate from the painting process. I would rush through them with a lot of negative energy. Like, I need to get this out of the way before I can finally start painting. As if all of it was just ballast, not part of the real work. But by reframing these tasks as a ritual, as part of the painting process itself, I've become so much more relaxed, much more present. Before, I would rush into painting, which means I was always surrounded by chaos. And now I genuinely enjoy preparing my workspace and mixing my colors. I've started enjoying painting so much more, simply because the lead up to it feels calmer. Taking my time to prepare my space, make drinks, mix colors, play around a little. What used to feel like a barrier between me and my painting process has now become the very condition that allows me to paint well. To give my mindset an extra boost, I also added a short meditation to my ritual. A small moment of reflection in which I repeat my mantras in my head. This is allowed to fail, this is practice. I can throw it off the balcony and burn it whenever I want to. Originally, I did this to reduce the pressure on myself, but it had another unexpected effect. During that meditation, I would sit calmly in front of the painting and simply do nothing for a moment. That allowed me to really take in the work, to zoom out, to look at it with fresh eyes. From that place of calm and overview, I could decide what I wanted to work on that day. It may sound simple, and I'm not even sure how to properly empathize what a huge game changer this has been. So what I mainly want to say is, just try it yourself. As we've probably realized by now, painting the cabinet is a huge task. It's not a simple to-do that I can just check off. It's a mountain of work, and even when I do paint something, it often feels like I'm not finishing anything, like I'm not moving forward. So to create smaller, more manageable, flow-worthy steps, I broke everything I still need to paint into multiple to-dos. Instead of staring up at one massive mountain, I'm now looking at several small hills. Like the jellyfish, the sky, the birds, the trees, the reeds, the water, the white border, the bubbles, all a little to do by itself. This gives me much more clarity about what still needs to be done, and a more realistic sense of how long it will take, which helps me feel more at peace with the fact that this project has been going on for so long. But more importantly, it feels manageable. My daily to-do is no longer paint the cabinet. No, now I get to focus on small parts and feel good when I check off that small piece, which make it much more fun to do and much easier to start. And also to stop, which taught me an incredible valuable lesson. For the first time in my creative life, I stopped painting while I was still enjoying it. Apparently, I usually paint until I don't feel like it anymore. But by stopping while I still wanted to continue, I ended the session on a positive note. And that made me realize I never end my painting sessions on a positive feeling. I'm usually flooded with self-criticism and then I just give up. But this time, for the first time, I thought, whoa, I'm actually doing great. And then I stopped. For me, that was mind-blowing. It's like I used to eat until I felt sick and only now discovered that you can just stop eating earlier and then you don't feel sick. The more I dive into flow, the more I realize flow is about movement. Because when you move, your self-consciousness decreases and you move out of your head into your body. And the movement also activates motivation. So every time I tense up, freeze and hit a hard art block, it becomes a matter of moving. That can be literal movement, changing posture, doing a small stretch, going for a short walk outside. But it can also mean movement within the work itself. Sometimes you feel like you've hit a wall in your work. I'm sure you recognize that. When you don't want to move forward. When you're either bored with the next step or too scared to take a risk. That's the tension of art block. And now I know that's when it's time to move. It helps to understand why you are stuck though, whether you're too high on that flow chart or too low. Sometimes it only requires a small action, a tiny dot, just to break the feeling that you are not allowed to touch the work, to move through the fear of ruining it. And other times it just calls for something much bigger, taking real risk, experimenting. And yes, that's terrifying. What if I ruin the whole piece? But I'm realizing more and more that if flow is the sweet spot between too boring and too overwhelming, then putting joy at the center of making is essential. And for me, joy doesn't live in the safe choices. Joy and flow live in curiosity, discovery, unpredictability, and problem solving. That's what I truly love about making. So if I go back to the question I asked at the beginning, can I force myself into a state of flow? The answer is yes, but not with force. I used to think that with enough discipline and consistency, if you just pushed yourself hard enough, even if you had to take many detours, you would eventually get there. But after diving into this topic, I discovered that the opposite movement is actually the movement towards flow. Not pushing straight through the mountain, but leaning back for a moment and looking at it. So I can break the mountain down into small hills that I can climb. I hope I can hold on to these insights in the future, that I can prepare, create and also stop with more joy and awareness. Checking in with myself, seeing where I am on the graph, moving towards that sweet spot, because that's where I truly enjoy myself. Did you enjoy watching this video as much as I enjoyed making it? Don't forget to like, hype, subscribe and click that bell button if you want to stay updated on future videos. Thank you so much for everyone who donated. You can support me by my Ko-fi account and super likes are also very appreciated. Making these kinds of videos are my favorite thing in the world, but I can't do it without your support. Supporting me can also be done by buying that limited edition Artprint into your home, so don't forget to take a look at my website to check that out or my other early works as well. In the future, I hope to fully focus on creating work around my chronic pain. I believe that it can be deeply healing, not just for myself, but also for others. And during that creative process, I will probably encounter many more topics I would love to share with you. If you'd like to know more about that already, in this video I explored whether art actually heals. So thank you for watching, and I will see you there.